Hi, I'm Darrin Peppard. Welcome to the Leaning into Leadership podcast, the podcast dedicated to today's hardworking leader. Join me every Sunday for leadership insight, inspiration, and a little pep talk to keep you rolling down your road to awesome. Welcome back into Leaning into Leadership for episode number 47. And episode number 47 features a conversation with Rick.morton. Who is Rick.morton, you ask? Well, I'll tell you. Rick has been the Jostens representative in Tacoma, Washington for the last 21 years. He grew up in San Diego and married his high school sweetheart 34 years ago. Rick has 3 adult children, 1 grandchild. His passion is to help every school he serves improve the environment with proven strategies and programs. Rick believes that the Jostens Renaissance program plays a significant role in helping schools go from good to great. As Rick says, I am who I am today because of the heroes in my life that believed in me. Parents, family, colleagues, and especially teachers. I stand every day on the shoulder of giants. Rick and I sat down recently and had a really wonderful conversation about his perspective looking into schools as that person who is truly a partner with schools, the person who really wants to do everything he can to support our schools, to support our students, and to see them be as successful as possible. Rick and I actually met many years ago at the Jostens Renaissance conference, and I've admired him for a long time. So it was really exciting to have an opportunity to sit down, have this conversation. I know you're going to love this, and we'll get to that right on the other side of this message from Road to Awesome. Leaders, your educators deserve to have a leader who believes in them, who supports them, and who lifts them up when they're down. Right now, they deserve that reminder that they are traveling their own road to awesome. On that road to awesome, we focus on the things we can control and we let go of the things we can't. On that road to awesome, we rise by lifting others, not by pushing each other down. And on that road to awesome, we change the world one conversation at a time. Leaders, I want to work with your schools. I want to work with you and your educators to lift them up, to honor the work they do, and to let them know they are not in this alone. Let's get together. Let's have a conversation. Let's get your teachers back on that road to awesome, to find that love, to find that clarity, and to walk in their purpose. Reach out to us at roadtoawesome.net for your opportunity to bring Road to Awesome to your school. Hey leaders, let me tell you a story. It's the story of my first year as a high school principal. I will tell you, I was exhausted, I was overwhelmed, and I lived my life breathing through a snorkel because my head was so far underwater, and I didn't think there was a way out. I mean, I was a mess. The 40 feet that it was to move from my assistant principal office down to the principal's office might as well have been a 400-mile trek. I was just absolutely putting in crazy hours. I was trying to do it all. Like trying to answer everybody's question, thinking I always had to be the smartest one in the room and I had to solve everybody's problems. We're talking severe Superman syndrome here, folks. Every day was fire after fire, and all I accomplished was putting out fires. Forget about leading. I was simply trying to survive. Now, after working with a leadership coach, I really was able to get things figured out, get my head from being a firefighter to actually being a leader. But it took work, and I discovered some things that really mattered. And that's why I've created Walk in Your Purpose, 5 mindsets to level up your leadership, a free ebook that you can have today at no cost. Just go to walkinyourpurpose.roadtoawesome.net/ebook to download your free copy. Again, that's walkinyourpurpose.roadtoawesome.net/ebook. It's time for you to walk in your purpose, to find joy in your job, and to be the leader you always knew that you could be. And now, as they say, it's on with the show. Enjoy this conversations with Jostens Scholastic Rep, Rick Morton. I will see you on the other side. All right, Rick, welcome into the Leaning into Leadership podcast, man. I've been looking forward to this conversation for weeks. I mean, we scheduled this quite a long time ago. And so finally, you and I get an opportunity to sit down and just have a really awesome conversation. So welcome into the show, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I've been looking forward to it myself.
Yeah. So you and I have known each other for quite some time, obviously, you know, with you being with Jostens and my connections with Jostens Renaissance. But just really quick for my listeners who don't necessarily know who Rick Morton is, just a quick rundown, you know, who you are, where you're coming from, those kinds of things.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've been with Jostens for 21 years as a scholastic rep, meaning I do the caps and gowns and graduation items. And it's mainly here up in the Tacoma, Washington area, which is about 30 minutes south of Seattle. So I just enjoy working with schools and supporting educators and students and families with one of the most significant moments of their life so far, and that's graduation.
So how does a person, I mean, we talk about this in education all the time. I was just telling you before we hit record that I was at a school yesterday, and one of the things that I did with that school, and I do with a lot of schools, is we just talk about our origin stories. You know, as educators, a lot of people just assume that they've always wanted to be teachers, when it's actually a small percentage who graduate from high school and it's like, I'm going off to be a third grade teacher, or I'm going off to teach, you know, high school math or whatever the case may be. How does a person, you know, end up working? And I mean, you have an incredible job. You really do. How does somebody get to that space? Or maybe the better question, Rick, is what is your origin story that got you to being a Jostens Scholastic Rep?
Well, so I'm from San Diego originally, and I've always been an entrepreneur, always loved owning businesses. I was a professional clown for 7 years when I was younger. So I was an independent guy back then, making, you know, my own money in high school. I never finished college, but I went right into having my family. So I had 3 kids by the time I was 22, and I needed to make money. San Diego's expensive. So I had a vending machine business. I sold it. I started selling furniture and some supplies, and I just love that independent spirit. I've never had a boss. I can't remember having a W-2 job ever. But the dot-com boom really hurt us, my family. I mean, I was good at making money in my 20s, but I was horrible at saving it. So in 2000, my wife and I just made the big decision to move up to the Northwest, which is where my family's from. And we did it for several reasons, just to get closer to family. But a part of it, too, was to preserve our own unit. I just felt like it was getting a little bit of the rat race feeling. And so when we moved up, there was a gentleman that went to my parents' church who owned a Jostens territory, and he asked me if I would help him acquire new schools, because, you know, I've always had that spirit of anything's possible. I was kind of a racehorse when it comes to meeting people and sales. So I worked with him for a couple of years, learning the business, and got to know what the difference was between, you know, commercial selling and educational selling. And then he retired, and Jostens gave me the privilege of taking over a portion of his territory. So that was back in 2003. And that was the beginning of everything.
So let's go back for a minute. You were a professional clown. If you thought I was going to glaze over that one, man, there's no chance. So, okay.
I know.
Talk about that a little bit.
My teachers are my heroes. Everything that I have in my life was based on a teacher saying to me, Rick, I think you'd be good at this. That's the way my life has been my whole life. And my 8th grade teacher, Miss Maureen Bender, said, Rick, you'd make a great clown. And I was like, what do you mean? Like a class clown? She goes, no, I don't know if you know, but on the side, I'm Maureen the clown. So she signed me up to be sort of mentored by her. I went to San Diego State Clown College for 6 months, graduated with honors, and I got my certification when I was 14 and a half. And I worked under Maureen, under her business. I think it was called Clowns R Us, or Just Us Clowns, for a couple years. And then when I turned 16, And then I went out on my own and started booking my own birthday parties and company picnics and parades. And I mean, it was good money, Darrin. I mean, think about it. This is 1985, right? All my friends were making $3 an hour working at McDonald's. And I grew up kind of poor, just to back them too. My parents didn't have any money, so anything I wanted had to come from me. So I was hungry. And so when I heard, she goes, Rick, we make $75 an hour. I was like, what? So I just hustled. So on the weekends, I would do 4 or 5 birthday parties, and I'd walk away with $400 or $500. And I did that all the way through high school. And I retired Rainy the Clown. So my name was Rainy the Clown. I retired him in 1989. So he's been retired for a while, but once in a while he likes to come out.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. You know, we talk all the time, you know, with educators. Well, you do and I do both. I mean, and you know, occasionally that, you know, that question, you know, who's that teacher that inspired you, you know, comes up, and people, you know, obviously, I mean, they always smile, and, you know, they've got this, you know, this thing that they remember. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody tell me that, well, what, you know, the teacher that inspired me said you'd make a great clown. I don't think right. I've ever heard that before. That's actually really amazing. And setting aside, you know, the images of Randy the Clown, I really wish we had an image of Randy the Clown to check out. But really, I mean, that sounds like that was the moment that maybe, or the thing that really lit that entrepreneurial fire for you. And, you know, I mean, you kind of laid out a little bit of a pathway there of, you know, from this business to this, to this, to this. I mean, the true entrepreneur spirit, is that what kind of set the whole thing on fire?
I think so. I mean, I had a paper route, you know, when I was 10, and I upgraded to the Union Tribune when I was 12. I would babysit kids. I would clean houses. I would mow lawns. I just, you know, my parents just didn't have much. And I had a heart. I was the oldest of 3 kids. So I think I just always felt compelled to contribute, you know. And so, and then anything I wanted that was nice, I just was like, I'm going to have to earn it myself. And I grew up in those, you know, where we was a latchkey kid, you know. My parents were both working. So it was just me and my brother and sister pretty much all day, every day. And so, yeah, I think that began that spirit of like, if I want something, I just got to figure out how to go and get it. And I always found that there's a lot of people everywhere you go that want to help you find your goals. And so, you know, it's that experience with Miss Minder was probably one of the first most significant ones. And then I got into high school and I started rebuilding cars and selling cars. I'd buy cheap cars, and my buddy Scott and I would rebuild them and sell them for a profit. And then, you know, we bought a few vending machines and we started working those for a little while. And then, you know, I just failing, learning. And then, you know, when I got out of high school, my wife and I, you know, we had a little baby, and it kind of disrupted some of my plans, but it just inspired me to kind of, well, what's next? And so met this guy who has a furniture franchise. And I said, John K., would you mentor me? I'll work hard. I'll work for free. But I saw this successful guy doing this amazing thing. And he goes, Rick, it's just about loving people. It's about being true to your word, showing up and working hard. And so, yeah, I learned how to operate this furniture franchise, working for another gentleman, and then broke off on my own. And yeah, it's just, I think I always loved the idea of being in control of that sector of my life, you know, having that agency, that autonomy just to go out and get it. And so that's always been a driving spirit. But I've also loved just being part of other people's success. So, you know, all the people that have helped me, I'm thinking, my goodness, it's very important for me to do the same for others. So I'm always looking for people who want to join or want to learn. And so I love it when people say, hey, can I have some time with you to learn about what you did here? Or tell me about your experience in doing that. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, but that independent spirit has always been something very important to me.
I just love that. I think that is really cool. You know, it's always great to have an opportunity to just kind of learn a little bit something about people's journeys. And I mean, I know there's a handful of things that I wanted to talk to you about today. I didn't expect that's where we would go, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I mean, it's great information, and it's always nice to know so much more about the individual. So let's now go ahead and jump forward just a little bit. I mean, I think about the work that you and your team do with your, Jostens Scholastic group there in the Northwest. And I mean, obviously, I see you guys every time we go in the summer to a Jostens Renaissance conference, you and Elliot and your team and so many schools that you represent and work with. When you think about the work that you do, so you're preparing to go into your schools, in the fall when it's time to, get out there and start talking about caps and gowns and senior garb and all those cool things. I know well enough, just from having worked with a Jostens rep very similar to you, that it isn't about, let's just go get a bunch of sales. How do you view your role in what you and your team do when you're coming into, a high school somewhere there in the Pacific Northwest?
I appreciate that. So I'm very clear about my role in schools. In fact, for those principals that know me, they know exactly what I'm about. They know that, yes, the cap and gowns pay my bills, but that's all. My heart is filled up when I can be part of the conversation around what is it that this building needs this year? Where are you at right now? What are your goals? And what can I do to help you reach those goals this year? And so my role in the building is really a partner, a community partner that has the ability to bring tons of resources and tools and ideas, and also some financial support to the journey of becoming to the next level of that school. And it really began in the very early years. So when I first took over the territory, what I didn't share earlier is that the gentleman who owned it before just didn't do a great job representing the brand. I don't know if you've ever had an experience at a restaurant where you got horrible service, and it just kind of made you not want to go back. And so that had happened to the Jostens name in this area that I took over. And so when I first became the primary representative, there were several schools that fired me because of the past challenges they were having. So it really shocked me because I just spent a ton of money buying this territory. And so what I did was I had one friend, his name was Scott Seaman. He was the principal of Tumwater High School. And he says, Rick, you have a great opportunity here that most people don't have. He says, I see your passion to help kids. I see your passion to help schools. But let me give you a list of questions to go around and just ask the principals that are still loyal to you about what's going on. And it was nothing about product. It was just about, what's keeping you up at night? What challenges are you facing? What are some things you're doing that you feel like you're really proud of that would be worth sharing? So I became sort of Scott Seaman became my mentor about what goes on in the world of a principal. And so my first 3 years, I didn't talk about product at all. I just became the idea guy. And, what happened, of course, after that was people were asking, well, why are you asking me these questions? Are you a consultant? Because I know nothing. I go, no, I'm just kind of doing a favor for a friend. If you know Scott, I know Scott, he's great. So it began just in this very organic way of just visiting schools and just finding out what's working and what's not. And so I think my role in schools is just that to this day. I have a few more schools now because, I had 20 then, now we have about 80, but now it's an exciting opportunity and a privilege for me to go into a building and say, hey, what are some things you feel like I could share with other schools that would help them? Or what are some things that I could help you with? Maybe some challenges you can share with me, because I happen to be talking with, 70 other principals about the challenges they're facing. And so I just feel fortunate because I've already got this system built where I'm serving, schools with caps and gowns and celebration products and symbols of success. But that's just sort of the icing on the cake. The meat, potatoes, the eggs, everything. The meat of it is helping that leadership team create an amazing environment for kids where they can feel connected, they thrive, they feel recognized. The teachers are excited to be there. They're feeling respected. The community's involved. Parents love showing up. That's the kind of environments that I'm trying to help all the schools I work with create.
So first off, you mentioned Scott Seaman, who you are correct. He is an absolute education rock star. Love that he was the guy that was your mentor. He's somebody I met many years ago through NASSP. We were either principals of the year together, or he was there working with NASSP when I was one, or whatever it was. But absolutely a great guy to be a mentor. And it's great the questions that he had you go and actually have those conversations with, because that's one of the things that we like to call kind of that problems of practice. What are the things that people are running into? And when a salesman would come in, representing a product and come and talk to me as a high school principal, yeah, I want to hear about the product, but, and I think Scott's this way too. I'm a relationship guy. I want to know that I can get to know you as a human being. You and I were talking before we hit record about Ricky Wilding, who was my Jostens rep in 2 locations. I mean, so much so that I went to bat for him for the second location when that particular territory was becoming available because of a retirement. What Scott did for you was he gave you those real easy entry point conversations, because you can sit down with a group of principals and say, hey, I want to talk to you about caps and gowns, and you're going to lose them. But you sit down with a group of principals or a group of superintendents and say, hey, tell me a couple of pain points you're dealing with. Man, those hands are going to go through the roof, because they all start to feel those kinds of things. And when you're able to say, I love how you said that you could be almost like that relay point of, hey, I'm hearing this in Puyallup, and I'm hearing this in Tacoma, and I'm hearing this in fill in the blank. All of a sudden it's like, hey, there's this connected network of principals, and you just became a part of it. And that kind of injects you into the conversation. I love that so much. What are some things you've learned from that? I mean, not just on the how you help solve their problems, but what are some like behind the scenes problems of practice that maybe some principals have shared with you that might maybe surprised you, that you didn't realize, wow, I didn't know schools struggled with that?
Yeah, well, I think the thing I've noticed the most is, what affects the school's culture the most. And, not the environmental piece, the temperature or the climate. I'm talking the culture. The long standing piece is strong leadership. I mean, so this whole podcast being leaning into leadership, I have noticed in my 21 years of Jostens that the buildings that are thriving the most are the ones who have strong leadership that's been in the building long enough to create that sense of belonging and permanence of knowing that they got their back. One of my most amazing principals that I work with as well is Jason Smith, and his simple philosophy is love kids and teach. And he has incredibly high expectations of both his students and his teachers. But along with that, he comes in with tons of high quality support as well. So it's high expectations and high support. And that leadership, I've noticed there's templates of that in many of the schools I work with. And there's also, unfortunately, examples where there's just been so much change and it just feels like they're managing chaos. And they don't have time to look ahead down the road and see, where do we want to go? Where do we want to build? And so I think the biggest thing I've walked away with is that principals that create an incredible leadership team around them and a vision of where they want the school to go. And then they clearly identify it and specifically lay it out in a simple term to where every student walking those halls, if you ask them, what does it mean to be a Ram? It means to be forthright, or it means to be tough, or it means to be resilient. And when you have a unified message in a school that has that kind of sort of trumpeting campaign going forward, it's all the result of that strong leadership. And I remember one of my first experiences with, Jostens Renaissance in the very beginning was with Stadium High School, which is, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie, The 10 Things I Hate About You, but it was the building that film was filmed at. And the principal at the time was John Kellett, and they were doing a big, huge remodel. And the reason he hired us as Jostens for the products is because he wanted to do Renaissance. And the very first assembly they put on was a 0.5 improvement assembly. And they had students create a shirt that was amazing. It was a black t-shirt with the castle on front, because it's this beautiful castle building. The tiger was breaking out of the front. The bricks were falling all out. The back of the shirt said, I know what you did last semester, kind of a spoof off the movie.
Nice.
And I was blown away when I saw how many kids felt so inspired. And it was just my first experience seeing the magic of that, recognizing with a clear mission of leadership what you're doing. And it hit me really strong the next week when I walked into another school that I was just trying to, it was a prospect school that wasn't working with Jostens. And I went in and had a conversation, didn't really go anywhere. But as I'm walking out, a student calls me and says, hey, Rick, are you the one that works with Stadium High School? I go, yeah. She says, Well, I'm the class president here it's Silas High School now, but at the time it was Wilson. And she says, I got to tell you something. I have a best friend that goes to Stadium, and he's been my best friend since the fourth grade. And he's really been struggling lately. A few weeks ago, he was even talking about taking his own life. And she was telling me that he was recognized at this assembly. He was one of the kids who got that shirt, and he stood up and he was able to receive that 0.5 improvement. And she goes, he is completely changed and wants to get involved and wants everybody else to feel what he felt that day. And it was probably one of the first times that I had personally realized that this leadership is more than just about, recognizing and helping kids. It's about saving lives. And so to me, that was sort of my first time of really getting that sort of knife in the heart conviction that I need to be about helping these schools create great connections with kids. So I think, going back to kind of what you're saying that I see in schools, it's that leadership that creates that strong environment for kids where everyone walking the halls has an opportunity to be connected to an adult, to a group or a club, and feels like they're really part of the family.
I just think that's amazing. I mean, it's not very often, I think, when I'm recording a podcast, I get emotional, but that's a really, really powerful story. And, it's one of the things that every now and again, somebody will ask me about Jostens Renaissance and about why I've been involved with it as long as I have. And I mean, obviously it's something I'm really passionate about, and I watched it, I witnessed it, I lived it, turning around the school where I worked as a high school principal. And it's for stories just like that. It's that one kid. I mean, I say it all the time that as educators, we have the opportunity to change the world one conversation at a time. And that right there is what you're talking about. So I guess that makes me kind of wonder. Actually, I'm going to chase this thought. So I just said, as educators, we get that opportunity. Do you consider yourself an educator?
Yeah, it's interesting you asked me that. I think secretly I really want to be. And I think I walk in with that mindset. One of the things that I love doing is I tell teachers and principals all the time, I said, I would love to be a guest speaker in your school. And and I have a little sheet that talks about all these little workshops that I've come up with just on basic stuff, leadership, communication, you name it. And so, I probably 100 times a year, I get an opportunity just to go into a classroom and just have a conversation with these students about life and about the lessons that I've learned. And so I feel like I get to do the best parts of it, plus have the entrepreneurial spirit of owning my own business. So, because I do love owning my own business. I love sales. I love growing. I love helping people be successful. But I would agree. I think everybody has an educator in them, especially if you have the heart that wants to help other people improve their lives, for sure.
Yeah. Well, we use the word staffaldy all the time. And, sometimes people ask me, what does that really mean? And you can say it's staff plus faculty or however you want to say that. But to me, what it's really about, and this is why I ask you the question, because this is how I felt about, Ricky as my Jostens rep too, was he was part of our staffaldy. And to me, anybody who has the opportunity to make a significant difference in the life of a kid is a part of our staffaldy. They are an educator. And it's clear that you have those opportunities to make a significant difference in the life of a kid. You don't have to necessarily be that one in the classroom. And I would imagine there's a number of kids who over the course of your career have maybe asked some things about being an entrepreneur or just been simply curious about what it's like to run your own business. Are there maybe is there a story or two that maybe you can share with us on that?
Yeah, I had a student years ago. He's from Lake Quinault High School. It's a school up on the peninsula. So if Washington were a thumb, it's way up on the thumb of the state. Tiny little school, 6 seniors in a class. I came to do the presentation because, in my opinion, the school is never too small to get an actual in-person presentation. That's my conviction. So he basically started asking me, what do I do? And this school is 3.5 hours away from my office. And this student worked through his teacher. I got an email saying he would like to kind of shadow you for a couple of days. Is that okay? He took it upon himself to get his uncle to drive him into my town, his uncle got him a hotel, and for 2 days, this kid showed up to my office, went to my class meetings, was my bag boy, and just watched and asked questions. And that's happened actually dozens and dozens of times. I think students are they're curious, and some of them who maybe are only seeing a certain bubble of their world, and they see an opportunity coming in from the outside, it gets them thinking outside of themselves. And if they have the courage to just ask, there's people like me who will say, yes, come along. I'd love to show you what we're doing. But yeah, that kind of stuff happens all the time. And again, that's part of my conviction, just about helping anywhere I can to, see students be successful.
We will return to the Leaning into Leadership podcast in just a moment. But first, let me ask you a question. Have you ever said to yourself, man, I should write a book? Well, if you have, then let me ask you another question. What's holding you back? What keeps you from taking the step that moves you from, I have an idea about a book, to, I am a published author? From experience, I would bet it's probably you're wondering who would even want to read a book that I wrote. Maybe you're questioning the idea. Is it unique enough? Is it valid enough? Is it good enough to be a book worthy of having published? Hey, as a best-selling author myself, I can tell you most writers have had the exact same feelings at some point in time during their writing journey. Here at Road to Awesome, we believe in cultivating leaders by elevating voices and promoting positivity. And a part of that work is publishing books for educators by educators. Go to roadtoawesome.net and hit the Contact Us button to set up a free, no-obligation conversation about your book idea. Hey, educators, we've all had incredible experiences. We all have amazing stories, and every one of them deserves to be told. Go to roadtoawesome.net, hit the Contact Us button. Let's have that conversation about your book idea. And now, back to the Leaning into Leadership podcast. So building on some of those things, and maybe even looping back a little bit to Castle High School, you mentioned a really cool celebration with the T-shirt, and I know what you did last semester. I would imagine through the course of your career, you have seen some really cool types of celebrations. What are maybe one or two that just really stand out that people need to hear?
Just one or two? Oh my gosh, I got hundreds. I mean, I have my favorite one about staffalty is Aberdeen High School years ago. Corey Crick, an amazing Renaissance educator, she convinced the Ford dealership to donate a car to their Teacher of the Month program. And so their teachers got to drive a brand new car. Now, it wasn't theirs to keep, but they got to drive it. And it was always something exciting, like a Mustang 5.0 or a Bronco or something cool. So to me, when you get your community and, on the side of the vehicles, they put Aberdeen High School Teacher of the Month. And so that was one of those things I just was so proud to see happen. And it stopped happening a few years ago because of the economy, but still pretty cool. Impressive. That cool, I know. I also love, one of my favorite celebrations is the schools do a version of this, and they call it different things, but it's a nighttime event where they recognize students for not anything in particular, just more character. And it's some schools call it the People's Choice Award. And they have, teachers, they have an opportunity to recognize two students for character or for improvement or for whatever. And it's typically those kids that aren't necessarily the 4.0 rock stars, but they're doing their best to show up every day and be successful. And then they have this formal event at night with the red carpet. Everybody dresses to the T, and there's lights and there's music and fancy cake afterwards. And the parents are given invitations sent home on parchment paper. It's just really special. And I've had several schools do that over the years. And everyone that I've ever been to, when I talk to the parents that are there, they're just always blown away because they're the parents that, when I got the call, I thought my son was in trouble. I didn't know it was going to be this, or this is so neat that the school does this. Because I'm a huge fan of celebrating students that maybe weren't dealt a huge, big, successful hand in their life, but they're still showing up, doing the right things. I love the thing I love is when all schools celebrate things like the lip dubs. Those are one of the things I love. If you ever seen those lip dubs that schools do, I have several of my schools that do it every year, and it's just seeing every single student being recognized and highlighted and in the spotlight in a very profound, fun event. Man, I tell you, there's nothing better than that either. So, but yeah, I can go on and on. I feel like schools that get this, they just find creative ways to just celebrate each other. It's amazing.
Yeah. And again, and it's, as our buddy PC says, it's making sure that they're seen and they're heard and they're loved. Right. And that's, right. I mean, that's the power in it. So, we have our final question we'll get to in just a minute, but I got one more that just kind of crossed my mind, and I want to get to this. And that's, you're in a unique position. You are an insider, but you're also an outsider. So in that insider/outsider perspective, what would be something you would share, maybe just as a general thing, like one piece of feedback or one piece of insight you would share with educators that maybe they don't see because they are purely on the inside?
I think occasionally what I would do is encourage them to get feedback from their community around what is the reputation of their building, and being open to really listening. A lot of times I pretend that I'm a parent, and I'll walk into the building and I'm asking myself, as I walk into that building, would I want my kid to go here? And little things like, look at the walls, and maybe I only see athletic stuff everywhere, and my kid's not an athlete. So, my kid's not going to feel welcome here. But just, I think, engaging with your community, asking them, where can we go? Be honest about how you feel like we're doing. Have you interacted with our students? Can you just tell us where we are? Because that information can help you as a leader of that building create a plan of improving those very important core things that are wrapped around this idea of what it means to be in your building. Again, I feel like it's such a simple request, but define what it is to be, a ram or a tiger or whatever your mascot is. Define what that means and build around that identity, this sense of strength, community, and belonging. And then the thing that you have to do after that is message it everywhere, promote that and celebrate that and recognize that. And if it's done in a way that's authentic and real and meaningful, then that reputation is going to just pour out of the building. So I feel like it's so easy to get lost in the day-to-day. So stepping out of the building and maybe engaging with the community is probably something that I think would help a lot of school leaders do a better job of going in the right direction.
That is very sound advice, and very important too. You're absolutely correct. It's one thing to do that work, around your brand and really getting clear around what it means to be, whatever, a Bronco, a Chief, whatever you are. But if you're not getting that input and getting feedback and really getting the pulse of your community, you're not getting the whole picture. So I think that's excellent advice. Final question. Same question I ask everybody here on Leaning into Leadership. Now you're on the hot seat. Uh-oh. So, Rick, what is one thing you're doing right now to lean into leadership?
Oh, I am right now. I'm finding new ways to get myself into awkward and uncomfortable and out of my comfort zone. I only grow when I'm thrust into a situation where I have no idea what to do. And so I'm finding myself in a place where my experiences so far have given me great ability to connect with principals. But where I feel like I need to improve my connections is with school leaders that are beyond the buildings. So I am challenging myself to engage more with community leaders, district leaders, superintendent leaders, maybe some city and state leaders. I think for too long, I haven't really saw my experiences as very important for the rest of the people to hear outside the buildings. And I guess I've just come to a recent conviction that it would be a shame if I didn't take sort of this just 20 years of just being in buildings and just sharing what some of the thoughts that I have around what I think they can do to support these amazing soul capsulating buildings that are, channeling the spirit in these schools. So that's, and practically what that looks like is every month I try to find somebody who is outside my circle and reach out to them and set a time to meet with them and have this kind of conversation. So that's what I'm doing.
I think it's awesome. I'm glad you and I got to have this conversation today. And I know that everybody who tunes in and checks out this conversation is going to find all kinds of incredible things in here. So, Rick, thank you so much for joining me here on Leaning into Leadership. And until the next time we see each other, man, take care of yourself.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. And I'm really glad that we were able to connect.
I've had the opportunity to interview a lot of leadership rock stars on this podcast, both inside of our school and outside of our school. And certainly Rick Morton is one of those rock stars. I appreciate him coming on the show and sharing his unique perspective. I also appreciate him talking about his passion as an entrepreneur and encouraging everyone to really chase their dreams and to go after the things that really matter to them. I really appreciated the perspective also from the outsider and insider perspective, to be aware of that feedback from our community and to be willing to listen to what the reputation our schools hold out in our community. That was really good stuff. There were so many great elements in there. And again, I thank Rick for being on the podcast. And now it's time for a pep talk. There are certain times of our year, certain seasons as we go through the course of a school year, when our educators and our students need a little bit of extra lifting up. Sometimes that might be the holiday time of season, where we're in between one break and another, and everybody can see that finish line, that halfway point, but maybe their eyes start to wander off the prize. As a leader, this is when you really rise up. This is when you really do everything you can to motivate, inspire, and keep people focused on the prize. Get out there this week and go make a difference with your staff and with your students. Go be present with them. Be in the trenches with them, in the classrooms, in the hallways. It's easy to get caught up in all the paperwork and all those other things. But set some time aside this week to make sure you are out there where you need to be, making a difference in the life of kids. Have a Road to Awesome week. Thank you for listening to the Leaning into Leadership podcast, brought to you by Road to Awesome. Don't forget, click subscribe, give a review, and share this with somebody who might also enjoy leaning into leadership.